with Bill. Bill, welcome to Sound Retirement Radio.
Thank you, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
Boy, I'm so glad to have you here. Now, before we get started, it looks like a surfboard or something in the background. What do you got going there?
Well, it is a surfboard, and there's a couple of boogie boards too. Some stuff that my wife and I like to do, and some friends of mine and I will go out and catch some surf once in a while.
Well, that's exciting. Are you in a tropical area, or you just wear a wetsuit?
I'm in a fairly warm area.
Okay.
It's we have good weather most of the year here.
I don't know if you've ever come out here to the Pacific Coast, the state of Washington, but I have a couple of people I know that go up to the very tip of the state of Washington, and they'll surf out there in Neah Bay, and they have to wear wetsuits. They have to wear a wetsuit when they're out there surfing, but not the case where you're at, huh?
It's not. I would wear a wetsuit in San Diego, yeah, and anything on the West Coast is a little chilly for me.
Well, I'm excited to jump into this interview with you. Bill, you and I, we don't really know each other personally. I just see it in the community itself, but I don't know anything about your situation, so I'm kind of excited to learn a little bit about this. Are you retired yet, or are you planning for a retirement?
I'm semi-retired. I left my full-time career job in November of 2019 and took a part-time job with a retailer. And started out selling men's clothes, and now I do packing and shipping. Part-time, usually 3 days a week. I try to get it down to 2. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, why did you retire from your previous career to go into part-time work?
There were a lot of changes made, and with one of the changes, I was given an opportunity to go part-time, remain on call 24 hours, but go part-time and get part-time pay and keep the same workload, or double my workload to maintain the same pay. And I said, none of the above.
What kind of work were you doing before?
I was a corporate chaplain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And so now you find yourself, you've done this partial transition into retirement. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 58 now, 59 next month.
Okay. And how about your wife? Is she still working, or?
She's working part-time, and she's been part-time for a few years.
Okay. Was it difficult to make that transition from working full-time into just this brand new career path and going part-time? Was it hard to make that change?
I was at my previous position for 17 years, so it was hard because my identity was wrapped up in my position. Because I was on call 24 hours a day, I would also a lot of times be at funerals on weekends, so I was always the chaplain. And whenever anyone saw me, that's what they knew me as. So that was different. But within a week, it was a huge stress relief to not be on call, to be able to have my time off be my time off, and that type of thing. So it was a big change there.
How long did it take for that identity that was wrapped up in that 17 years of being a chaplain? How long did it take or do people still refer to you as chaplain when they see you?
Some people still think of me as chaplain, but for the most part, especially my friends and family all know that I don't do that. And I'm not even in clergy work at all anymore.
So you felt this incredible release of stress within a week of leaving that employment?
Yes, so much so that I was driving about 30,000 miles a year, 20 to 30,000 miles a year, which is how I got to listen to so many podcasts. And with that driving, I was, once I stopped, it's like now I drive 6 miles and I don't even want to drive. I couldn't understand before why somebody wouldn't want to drive 20 miles to go somewhere. And now it's, I don't want to drive more than the 6 miles I do in my little part-time job.
Oh, wow. We had a barbecue at our house last night. We had some friends over, and we were talking about this gig economy that we live in, where people have so much more flexibility and freedom around their time. And this friend of mine was telling me he just took his family to Disney World, and while he was there, he had a dog sitter come and take care of his dog at his house. He used a website called rover.com. And those types, this gig economy that we live in, where maybe it's driving for Uber or delivering groceries from Costco or working from Rover and watching people's pets. I mean, it just seems like there's more opportunities than ever these days to kind of have more control over your time, but still stay engaged with people, still have income. Was there a reason that you decided to go the route that you did where you're working more retail?
I like people. There was a month, February of 2020, just before COVID hit, that I did try Uber and Lyft while I was doing my part-time stuff, just to see. And for me, it just really didn't pay once I took into account the wear and tear on the vehicle, the fuel, the amount of time I was spending, and that type of thing. It wasn't worth it. For some people, they say they do well with it. It just wasn't worth it for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard that from other people too. Some of those business models maybe not as good as others, but I'm kind of excited about this Rover where you can either have a pet come to your house and watch it, or you can go to somebody else's house and watch a pet. This friend of mine was telling me that his neighbor was saying that the pet sitter drives up in a nicer car than he has. Were there any impediments, Bill, when you made this decision? Was your wife on board for it, or was there anything that maybe it was holding you back, or that you felt like you had to overcome in order to make that decision?
There wasn't, because we were somewhat prepared for it and we'd been discussing it.
Okay.
We initially started back in 2017, early 2017. I found Choose FI, the podcast, cool. When Clark Howard changed his podcast from a 2-hour podcast to a half-hour podcast.
Okay.
I needed some more content and found Choose FI. And from that, I heard Mr. Money Mustache talk about the 4% rule and 25 times expenses and those kind of things for retirement. And honestly, my wife and I had never looked at how much money we had in our retirement funds at all. We never even looked at, we just kept putting it away. I was putting 20% of my pay in with my job. We'd almost always put at least 10% in with full-time jobs. That she had some government stuff from when we were first married, and she worked at an Air Force station. So she had some TSP that we had converted into one of the big three, which I would not do now. But
you wish you would have held on to that TSP.
Kept it in the TSP rather than move it over into the big three, just because the expenses are lower and the options would have been sufficient for what we wanted to do anyway. But we rolled it over and put it in one of the big three. And so we added up all of our retirement money, and it's like, we're pretty close. We could do this within 5 years. And then on Stacking Benjamins, I heard you back in 2018, 2019, when you went on there and talked about the retirement budget calculator. Plugged everything in there, and it said, this will work now.
That's pretty cool. Did you try any other calculators, or did you only?
Oh, yeah. The Rich Broke Dead calculator is probably my favorite. There's the Flexible Retirement calculator. There's probably a half a dozen. I tried almost every one that was based on expenses instead of income.
And did you find many of those? Did you find many calculators that were based on expenses instead of income?
Probably a half a dozen or so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Rich Broke Dead, Flexible Retirement Calculator, and focusing on expenses instead of income. Why did you do that? Why did you focus on expenses instead of income?
Because the only correlation I think that income should have and expenses should be having in common is that your income needs to be more than your expenses. Other than that, if you make $100,000 a year, well, and you spend 30 or 40 for life and put the rest away, no calculator is going to take that into account.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make income, and they don't have to have a percentage of one another. Especially your income. Let's say you're at 100, to use round numbers. You put 20% away. That's 20,000. So there's 20%. You're living off 80. Well, then you've got your health insurance comes out of there. There's another couple $1,000s a year or several $1,000s a year. Your vehicle expenses, your clothing expenses, all of those things that you're not going to need when you're retired. It doesn't make it for me. It doesn't make sense that that's got anything to do with my retirement income.
Ah, interesting.